The sign was only 12 words long. Private property. No trespassing. Access by permission only. It was sitting on my own land, on my own fence. And somehow, that was enough to make an HOA call the police. My name is Daniel Carter, and I own 40 acres of rural property just outside a growing Texas subdivision. For years, my land had been quiet. No sidewalks, no streetlights, no neighborhood meetings. Just open pasture, a gravel driveway, a small red barn, and a long wooden fence marking my property line. Then the subdivision expanded, and suddenly, people started using the edge of my property as a shortcut. At first, I ignored it. A jogger here, a couple walking their dog there. Then kids started riding bicycles through the gate. And one afternoon, I found a stranger parked beside my barn. I walked over and asked him what he was doing. He casually pointed toward the road. "I'm just cutting through." That's when I realized people actually believed my land was some kind of community pathway. So I decided to make the boundary unmistakably clear. The next morning, I installed a simple metal warning sign on my own fence. No threats, no insults, no aggressive language. Just a basic warning telling people that the property was private. I stepped back and looked at it. Perfect. Problem solved. Or so I thought. The following afternoon, my phone rang. It was the HOA. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Karen Whitmore, the HOA president. Her first sentence was, "Mr. Carter, you need to remove that sign." I looked through my window at the sign. "Why?" She told me the sign was hostile toward the community. I almost laughed. I asked her what exactly was hostile about telling people not to trespass. She said residents had a right to use the area. I asked her to show me the legal document proving that. She didn't. Instead, she said, "We've always had access there." That sentence became very important later, because "we've always done it" isn't the same thing as "we legally can." I told Karen I wasn't removing the sign. She warned me that the HOA would take further action. I said, "That's fine." Then I hung up. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, I was working near my barn when I heard a vehicle approaching. It wasn't an HOA truck. It was a police cruiser. A deputy stepped out and walked toward my gate. I immediately knew why he was there. The HOA had called the police. Apparently, they told law enforcement that I had put up a sign blocking a community access route. The deputy looked at the sign. Then he looked at me. "Is this your property?" I handed him my deed. He looked through the paperwork. Then he asked, "Does the HOA have an easement?" I told him I had never seen one. The deputy nodded and said, "Do you have anything showing the boundary?" I handed him the property survey. He studied it for several seconds. Then he walked over to the fence. He followed the boundary markers. He looked down the gravel road. Then he came back to me. And that's when the entire situation changed. He said, "From what I'm seeing, this appears to be a private property dispute." Karen had apparently told him the sign was obstructing a community road. But the documents told a different story. The road wasn't automatically public just because neighborhood residents had started using it. And my sign wasn't an obstruction. It was a warning. The deputy turned toward the HOA representative who had arrived behind him. He asked her a simple question. "Do you have a court order requiring him to remove this sign?" She didn't answer. He asked again. Still nothing. Finally, she said, "No." The deputy nodded. "Then this isn't something we're going to enforce." You could practically see the anger on her face. She started arguing that residents had used the route for years. The deputy calmly explained that if the HOA believed it had a legal right to access the property, it needed to establish that through the proper legal process. It couldn't simply call the police and expect them to remove someone's property. Then he looked at me. "Leave the sign where it is." I nodded, and that was it. The police cruiser pulled away. The HOA representative stood there for another minute, staring at the sign like it had personally insulted her. Then she left too. But the funniest part happened a few weeks later. The HOA finally had its attorney review the property records. And suddenly, the phone calls stopped. The threats stopped. The letters stopped. Nobody demanded that I remove the sign anymore, because they couldn't find the legal authority they had been claiming existed. The sign stayed exactly where I put it. And something else changed. People stopped cutting through my property. No more strangers near the barn. No more bicycles through the gate. No more random vehicles parked beside my pasture. The sign had done exactly what it was supposed to do. It didn't start a war. It ended one. And that's a part one thing the HOA misunderstood from the beginning. I wasn't trying to control their neighborhood. I wasn't trying to tell them how to run their community. I just wanted one simple thing. For people to understand where their property ended. And mine began. Sometimes the strongest boundary isn't a locked gate. It's simply making the truth impossible to ignore. So the next time somebody tells you they have a right to use your property, ask them one question. Can you show me the document? Because confidence isn't proof. A phone call isn't ownership. And an HOA letter isn't a court order. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.